Welcome to Mantle Mondays, Mark. How are you?
Great. It's good to see you, Hummer. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, it's always great. I know we've had a few conversations on your channel, and it's been great. And we thought we'd extend the exciting times on ours and let you talk more about yourself because you do a great job of letting everybody talk about themselves. So that's to repay them in the best way possible.
Appreciate it.
We try and do here is just try and give people the authentic story of who you are, what you're about, what you believe in, and I'll chime in knowing having known you through a number of chapters and I know that's the same on my side. Just the growth has been tremendous. The experiences over time have been really fantastic. We've more recently become neighbors, and that's been a great experience as well. So appreciate all the neighborly love. But really over to you. Maybe give us a quick background, walk us through folks who are meeting you for the first time, I got this phrase from one of my kids after 6, 7. They gave me the ELI 5. So explain it to me like I'm 5, and let's yeah.
Um, okay, that might be challenging, but I'll try. All right. I'm Mark MacLeod. I have been in the venture-backed startup world since 1999. I spent 14 years as CFO for a number of companies, including Shopify and FreshBooks. I was one of the original general partners in Real Ventures, which for a decade was Canada's certainly largest, as our most active seed stage venture fund. I was there for the investment period of Fund One. And I went from there to FreshBooks. And then after that, I founded and ran a boutique investment bank called SurePath Capital Partners that focused exclusively on companies that look like Shopify and FreshBooks, i.e., SaaS for SMB. Had a stupid amount of success with that. We had obviously an office in Toronto, office in San Francisco, clients in Europe. If I was awake, I was working. And shock upon shock, got divorced. And that prompted a bunch of reflection. And I realized actually across all of these roles, whether I was like a CFO acting as a right hand to a CEO, VC trying to help founders become CEOs, or a banker trying to help CEOs achieve massive outcomes, the thing that I enjoyed most was the one-on-one coaching and advisory conversations. And I was just like, man, skip the banking. I should just be a coach. So I had that insight in 2019, and then the world served up a pandemic in Q1 2020. And I had hundreds of millions of dollars of deals die in like a 10-day period. I was like, this is it. This is my window. Thank you, universe. And I shut my firm down and became a coach. And so now I'm in year 6 of a pretty specialized practice, coaching CEOs of technology companies that have raised venture capital.
I love it. I almost like religion, read your posts. I think everybody out there should take stock of what's being written by Mark and what's being said on his podcast because you get a lot of the insights and truths into matters that as a founder, it's a lonely journey. Even if you've got family, co-founders, it's still a lonely journey. And you sometimes you reflect and you're in an echo chamber, but sometimes having an insight or learning from people in a similar situation, you can't pay for that insight at some point, right? And it's amazing. We'll dive deep into that. I think there's a lot to take away in there, and I want to get deep so people can really understand some of the insights there and learn how to get more of Mark's time and kind of insights from there as well. But maybe just backing up a bit, you have worked with a lot of different high performance people, including yourself. What does it take to be a successful person in this domain today, and maybe contrast it and build up from kind of when you entered the industry and some of the great stories you shared with me?
Well, when I entered, the prevailing wisdom was a founder would get it started and then they'd bring in the professional CEO, right? Hand over the keys and like, yeah, thanks, we'll take it from here. So obviously the biggest evolution is the founder CEO, right? And you look now, all the biggest outcomes are founder led start to finish, like Airbnb, Canva, Shopify, Stripe, NVIDIA, you name it, right? Um, and so there's a special magic that founders bring, and a passion that borders on obsession and naivety and willing to do things that someone who had more domain knowledge might not try. And so that's beautiful. If I look at kind of what separates those people. Like, first of all, like, just to be clear, right? 90% of startups fail, even with funding, right? It's a pretty brutal funnel. Out of that, there are some spectacular successes. When you're looking at the successes, you must take into account luck and timing. That's at least half of it, right? So, but if we set that aside and focus on the actionable traits of those CEOs, I would argue like they're in love with the problem. They don't have to be in love with the problem from day one, right? It's not like it can happen, but to go all the way at some point, it has to become their purpose, right? It has to become the reason why they wake up in the morning. I would argue that the best CEOs lean into their superpowers. They don't try and be everything and anything, and instead surround themselves with the complementary people. The example I bring up all the time is Toby at Shopify, who's obviously a deeply introverted technical genius. As the CEO of a public company, he should be the person doing all the Wall Street quarterly earnings, CNBC squawk box BS. He doesn't do it. He never has. But early on, he hired Harley, who's his literal polar opposite, and Harley is actually just born for that kind of stuff. What is your kryptonite is somebody else's superpower. So assembling kind of the right team. Something I've observed is like you can read all the blog posts, all the books, you can have all the coaches, advisors, mentors, peer groups. It's all good. You should do it. But the number one thing that will grow you as a CEO is to unlock revenue growth and then hang on for dear life. Like nothing else will grow you, right? And then revenue is the magnet. It's the magnet that attracts capital, the magnet that attracts ambitious talent looking to join a rocket ship, the magnet that attracts customers looking for the category leader, and ultimately the magnet that attracts strategic buyers who are scared shitless of you. And so I would argue that the best CEOs realize that they are here to unlock revenue. They may be technologists, they may be product people, but like if I had a pie chart of all the elements of value creation over the life cycle of a company, the single biggest slice of the pie is distribution, go to market, right? And so the best CEOs just nail that and build, massive companies.
Let's dig in on a few things there, and I pause you reluctantly only because there's so much insight in there, and I kind of want to roll back into some of them and dig a bit deeper. Some are comments, some are the questions. You brought up a few things. Problem, passion. It never feels like a job. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it doesn't feel like it's a job, right? I think that's a sense of purpose that I see from a lot of people that have been successful over time. And even if you're not successful, you still have that drive and have that passion and luck, timing, shots on net, you'll get there, right? I think that's kind of the thing we see. The other thing you mention is superpower and Batman, Robin, or Kryptonite for one being a superpower for the other. Like I've just seen this over time, having seen the hundreds and hundreds of teams. I'm thinking the first time through, naively for me, I was like, I can do it all. I got to do it all. And the answer was the less I was doing of something because I was just not very good at them, the more awesome we became as a company, as a team, and as the opportunity started to blossom. I'll tell you, just from my perspective, having worked with a few people, and you'll see, them like Sunny and Farhan and others, Gavin, over time. Like, there's always been this like, what are you good at? What am I good at? And it's like the trading card match. Do we have the superpowers in all the areas we need? And it's been super insightful and super powerful. I think you probably spend a lot of time, maybe kind of in context. How do people uncover what their superpower is, and how do they realize what they're not good at? And then finally, how do they get to the realization they need somebody?
Yeah. I've thought a lot about this, and I think it comes down to energy, right? There are activities that give you energy, where you just get into a state of flow. It doesn't feel like work. Your relationship with time changes. And then there are other activities that drain, are obviously the opposite. They drain energy. So I start with this observation, right? The biggest outcomes, founder led, start to finish. That's irrefutable. You think about building a startup, it's a creative exercise. You are literally creating a company. Creation requires lots of energy. For a seed to become a plant or a tree, is lots of energy. For a baby to become a fully formed adult, lots of energy. For a CEO to turn a vision into a market leading company, lots of energy. And so the thing for CEOs to do is to solve for energy every step of the way. And I've actually created a community that is designed specifically on this called Limitless. It's a new thing just for CEOs. We just had our first kind of retreat in Tulum. But there's two principles here. One is getting people to put themselves first, meaning prioritizing physical health, mental health, and if you're willing to go there, spiritual health. Let's face it, building a company is a personal development journey disguised as a business. And then taking that increased energy, mental clarity, and inspiration and focusing it on unlocking revenue. These two paths, right? And you do this, and it just creates this virtuous cycle. And then you become limitless. That's what enables you to keep scaling and growing faster than your business year after year after year. Now, what I am trying to achieve with this is counter to the prevailing narrative for startups, right? Which is like bro hustle culture, sleep when I die, use caffeine to get through the day, not putting yourself first, putting yourself last, right? Just like sacrificing sleep, not going to the gym, eating like crap, just so you can do more work, right? But it never ends, right? And so that, coming back to energy, that type of lifestyle, which is dominant and celebrated, just look at the rise of 996 now, especially in SF, total bullshit, might lead to some short term velocity in gain, but will ultimately lead to burnout. If you recognize, hey, great things take time, the average startup is 7 to 10 years, many are longer. I'm holding an angel investment that's in year 18, still nowhere near the finish line, right? That's a marathon. You need lots of energy to get to the finish line. And but most folks burn out long before they get there. So, very long winded answer to your question, but the focus for founders and CEOs needs to be energy first.
Let's dig in a bit there and unpack some things because I think it was recently you posted, "Hey founder, the startup's a chapter. It's not your life." Yet there's this
Yes.
like balance on the other side of like, it's my passion, it's the problem, it's why I wake up in the morning. And then in there, you lose yourself, you forget yourself, and you got to rediscover yourself. Like it's one of
Yep.
these, you very impactful and insightful. Maybe spend a bit of time to unpack that a bit for people.
Yeah. The last company I operated at was FreshBooks. I was CFO there and led corporate development. And I would regularly have what I call freshmares, which are FreshBooks nightmares. I would be solving business issues while I was trying to sleep. And it was so common that I kept a notepad and pen by my bed because I couldn't get back to sleep unless I wrote down the insight. And the point of that is just like I was obsessed with the company. Even though I wasn't the founder, I always, as CFO, viewed it as my responsibility to make sure that we were capitalized and, building towards a big outcome. And and so I was obsessed with the company. In that period, I was there. I was an advisor for a long time, but I was there full time for a little over 2 years. During that time, all I thought about was FreshBooks. And, my kids were pretty young then, kind of almost teenagers. And when I was home, I might have been physically home, but I wasn't mentally home. I was like fried from the day or preparing for tomorrow or jet lagged from getting back from SF or like whatever. And now I look back, it's like so in the rearview mirror. Like I left FreshBooks in 2015, like over 10 years ago. And so it's just a chapter in your life. Again, going back to that observation, right, that the typical startup is 7 to 10 years, sometimes longer. When you're in it, it feels like everything. But, God willing, you're going to live 70, 80 years. It's 10% of your life. You know, Mantle's not your first rodeo. You've had other roles where it felt like everything, but like You have a family, like you have other roles. You're a father, a partner, you're a brother. And I would argue that you need to honor all of those parts of your life to live kind of a fulfilling life. And I think most founders lose that along the way, right?
That's a uh, beautiful thing. I feel like there's a fabric behind it that comes from depth of learning and experience and observation that, it takes a lifetime to get, and people just got it for free in a minute. So it's kind of one of those things.
There's got to be
Um,
some benefit to getting old. You learn some shit along the way,
there you
usually the
go.
hard way.
We'll get into some of the philosophy and encroaching and your show, which I think are really really great in tandem. There's two experiences. There's a bunch that are seminal, but maybe I think would be helpful is um, you work directly with the team over at Shopify. I believe was Russ Jones after you or before
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Or
He replaced me.
so Russ is a longtime friend of mine over a couple decades. Has been a mentor in time. Um, and I got his take of what it was like working with the team. Maybe share some things that are fun and insightful for people and things they didn't realize. Obviously, the splitting of two roles was one. Maybe there's other things that people would like.
Yeah, I mean, for context, so I showed up at Shopify quite early. At the time, there was a second floor office above a second cup coffee shop underneath on whatever the main street is in Ottawa.
Parks,
Um,
streets,
Toby first reached out to me. I had this blog called Startup CFO. This is before VCs were blogging all the time, and I was kind of the only guy in Canada blogging about SaaS metrics. He asked me to come and spend a day with him. He's like, "Hey, we're growing like stink, but we don't know what to measure. And the few measures we have, we don't know if it's a good number or a bad number." I came and I spent a day with them. And the output of that was a comprehensive set of metrics with benchmarks. And this was an early just sign of what was to come, right? That they had a weakness, which is we don't know what to measure. And they turned it into an overstrength by hiring this hacker out of Amsterdam to build this data warehouse that could have been its own startup. Literally every SaaS startup would have wanted to license the measurement capability that they had. That's the origin of what like you see on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that globe thing with like that starts from that data warehouse. Anyway, so just a little kind of sign of the potential for greatness. It was obvious to me the second I walked into the office, this was an angel funded company, but quality and taste. Like it was a beautiful office. Everyone was given a budget that they could only spend at Apple to, get their computer equipment, whether you wanted the MacBook or the I forget what the square thing's called. Anyway, like you could only use Apple. I showed up because accounting software wasn't on the cloud at the time and there was no Mac version. So I showed up with a PC and Toby's eyes bugged out. But in any event, um, and just like a really tastefully decorated office, right? So just that quality design, that's Daniel's influence was prevalent in the office. I think the big thing, as a CFO, I was younger at the time, like Virgo, anally retentive, CPA, the world is black or white. There's a best way to do things. If I came in and said, this is how you do things, Toby would absolutely bristle at that, like just wasn't having it. Anything I proposed that we do had to be defended on first principles. And if it survived that barrage of logic, it got done. But, if you just come in and say this is the way to do it, Toby's reflex is to not do it that way. And I love that, right? Because if everyone followed best practice, everyone would have the same outcome, right? By definition, if you're shooting for something that is unique, you can't do what everybody else does, right? You have to think differently. The biggest thing for me, I helped Toby raise the Series A, and then those same investors ended up leading an insider Series B. When I looked underneath the hood at the kind of cohorts, it was magic, right? Like I hadn't seen, and their merchant base was really small then. It truly was SMB. Like there was long before Shopify Plus. But even with that, so even with the churn that is inherent in that segment, those unit economics were gold. And so no surprise that we were able to get what was definitely the best SaaS investor on the planet at the time, Bessemer, to lead the round with FirstMark. A little piece of useless trivia. So Bessemer has been around, I feel like since the 1920s. And they, because of that decision to double down and lead the Series B, Shopify ended up being their largest return ever.
Wow.
Yeah,
There you go. Little bit of history on a number of fronts there.
yeah. Yeah.
The notch
Special
in the
company.
belt, the approach, and I think people wanna always fast forward to current modern day stuff and forget that there was a phase that it was small and it was, equally hard just on a different scale.
Hmm.
But the focus and getting those things right has always been there. So it's really, testament to you all for doing that. Let's flip into some of the stuff that you're working on now because I find it super fascinating and I love it. I found there was a generation of folks who always wanted the founder T-shirt,
Hmm.
and like I see it now in some of the investors are like, "Oh, I had a startup," and I was like, "Oh, great," and they were there to get the T-shirt, not to ultimately play out the journey. And it's like the classic, like, "Oh, I was at like YC, Winter 24, this company, and it's like Winter 25," and I'm like, "Well, what happened to the company? Where are you?" And they're like, "Oh, it didn't work or whatever," and they moved on into this new thing, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And let's kind of dig in there. Are people starting companies? Like, what are the right reasons to start? What are some of the en vogue, like, I think when we were growing up, it would have been like, everybody wanted to be on Wall Street or wanted to be a GE zealot, right? In
Hmm.
management, wanted to work at NASA or Intel or something, right? Like over time, these things all change. Maybe talk a bit about people starting companies and what you've seen be the right reasons and some folks where it's like, oh, if you could go back in time and knew this about yourself.
Yeah. So when I entered this industry in 1999, there were real barriers to starting, right? My first company had to like spend 3 million on Oracle database licenses just to get going. Whereas today, especially with vibe coding, like anyone can kind of get started from home, right? Every piece of infrastructure you need is available in the cloud. Everything you need to learn is probably a tutorial on YouTube. So it's easier than ever to start. I would argue it's harder than ever to go all the way and build a market leader. I think lots of folks who have some kind of product background, like when I think of product managers, like the best product managers are like mini CEOs. Like they've got the context, right? And can connect the dots. But that does not mean that every product manager should be a CEO because being a CEO entails so many other things. And it's, the most demanding role. When I was operating, I was offered a CEO gig twice and I turned it down flat both times because I knew the demands of that role. So I think a lot of people start um, just because they can, or just out of curiosity, or I've built the thing without thinking it through to the end state. And am I actually going to turn this into a company? Am I going to raise capital? Like, am I going to try and win a market? Like, that's a huge leap. I've seen three motivations, right? One is like, there's a big market. And so that motivation ultimately is money. In my experience, that is not an enduring motivation. You've been an entrepreneur for a long time, but like think back to like when you were on someone else's payroll and you got a pay raise, you felt good for a moment and then you just got back to living your life. Or even with some exits, right? Like, whatever, okay, that's great. Now I'm comfortable, but you still got back to your life. So like money's just not an enduring source of motivation. Other founders are in love with a solution. I've built this widget. It's amazing. It has these features. And that sounds like a good source of motivation, but it actually creates a closed mind, right? It's just like, I'm trying to get you to just look at my product and buy my product, right? And like, you don't buy it, like, oh, I didn't explain it well. Let me explain it to you again. You're just like laser focused on trying to get people to adopt the product.
I nod
So,
every time you say something because it's happened to me and I felt it or I've been in that situation on both sides of the table. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So the only enduring source of motivation is what we talked about before. Like you've just fallen in love with the problem, right? And so the example I bring up often is Toby again, right? Like Toby's a billionaire. He doesn't need to work. He could buy an island beside Richard Branson's, or he could just race cars full time because he does that. But he works harder than ever. And that's because he has this mission, which is to make commerce simple and to enable anyone who has an idea for a product based business to launch it and scale it. And he's not done. Right. So, like, it's not simple yet, or it's not simple enough yet. There's still friction. So, he's endlessly fascinated by that problem. And therefore, he just keeps going.
Couple other things here. So you also have the your show. It's the
Mhm.
Startup CEO show, which I love and I've been on. Thank you for having me. What have you some of the insights you've learned from there and shared maybe share with folks? And you kind of have an all-star cast of folks you've walked through there. So maybe just kind of give folks some insight there.
Yeah, I kind of run episode 80 something now. I ask CEOs questions for a living. So bringing CEOs onto a podcast and asking them questions feels pretty natural. Everyone has a unique journey. And I learn the same way I learn from every coaching session. I definitely learn from every podcast. And it's funny, I put all of the transcripts into Notebook LM and asked it to distill what were the 10 best practices that the CEOs recommended. And there won't be big surprises, like the 10 best practices, like grow faster than your company, right? If your company's doubling, make sure that you are at least doubling. Might be worth circling back on how you do that because I have some thoughts, but I'll just keep going, right? Staying obsessed with customer and product. Having a bias for action. Speed is the primary strategy and, primary tactic. Never compromising on talent. Defining your culture early, building scalable systems, being radically honest. Again, this kind of ties back to speed. Protecting your health. This is maybe counterintuitive to the Silicon Valley narrative, but like it's come up a lot. And then managing investors strategically because there's lots of ways where you can become unaligned with investors. So, of all the advice, this was kind of what bubbled up the most across 80 something episodes.
That's incredible insights. I'm just digesting a few of those.
And I'll speak about the growing faster than your business for a second, because that's the thing, right? Like, again, biggest outcomes are founder led. By definition, those CEOs are growing faster than their companies, because if they don't, they fall behind, right? And so how do they do that? I would argue the most powerful way is they've unlocked that distribution flywheel, revenues happening, and therefore they're just forced to kind of surf the wave and keep up. Tactically, what it means is like you look at all the best performers, professional athletes, virtuoso musicians, whatever, they have coaches, right? If you want to be the best, you have a team around you to make you the best. If you're an athlete, you have your team coach. You probably got a sports psychologist. You've got physiotherapist. You got someone making you the perfect macro balanced meals. Like whatever you need to be peak you get it. And the best CEOs have that. At one point, pretty early in his journey, Toby had two coaches. Um, One of those coaches ended up coaching his leadership team. And then they brought that person in house and built a coaching function that they call talent acceleration, which is separate from HR. And lots of leaders inside Shopify get coached. So coaching's a thing. The number one thing is self-awareness. It's the number one thing I look for in CEOs to coach. It's the number one thing that I look for in CEOs to invest in. Because if you think your shit doesn't stink, then you're not open to learning and you'll just inevitably fall behind, right? The best CEOs will basically review their day. Here's what I could have done better. This was great, double down. I need to make this correction here. And they'll go through like a learning loop every day, right? For what it's worth, like we have this stereotypical image of a CEO, and introversion doesn't usually show up on that list of kind of stereotypical attributes of a great CEO. But I think some of the best tech CEOs are actually highly introverted. And I correlate introversion very highly with self awareness. You're comfortable being by yourself. You don't need to be in a room. You don't need to be blabbing all the time. By definition, if you're speaking, you're not listening. They listen to themselves, they reflect, and they get better.
If you can't be alone with yourself, that's one of the questions, right? It's like, why? What's happening? What's going on?
What are you avoiding?
Yeah, and then being alone with your thoughts, one of the things for myself just over time is writing.
Hmm.
Find time to write. I don't think you need an hour a day to write a journal that's gonna become a Hollywood production. But write, like
Hmm.
what's the downside? You put something on paper and you crumpled it or you put a keyboard
Yeah,
in and you delete it. Like, there's no downside to it. It's been transformative for me, and I'm sure for others as well. When you write something, it crystallizes at your thought in the moment, and
that's
your
right.
thought can change over time. You can write about the same topic week after week after week. It can be different, right? And I think this is super interesting and really a great introspection.
Also,
Um,
for what it's worth, writing has been key to my life. First of all, I've kept a journal for most of my adult life, and that's generated a bunch of self awareness. But if I look back, all of my most important professional relationships have come from people reading my writing. Like I said, Toby reached out because he read my blog. When the guys wanted to start real ventures, they're like, we should get Mark to be the fourth partner because he has an audience and he's super focused on SaaS, and that's a thing. Mike from FreshBooks reached out years ago, maybe 2007. I get on a call and he's like, literally, like, hey, Mark, I love your blog. Would you like to move to Toronto and be my CFO? Like, wasn't subtle at all. And I eventually became a CFO. When I was running an investment bank, I don't know how many investment banks are, but there's a lot, and they're full of Ivy League number bots who wear Patagonia vests and are really smart and can do lots of stuff in Excel. But by the time we were done, we had no competition. Or a Toronto-based investment bank selling San Francisco companies. Like, that is backwards. And the reason was thought leadership, right? We went deep on a sector and we shared our thoughts all the time. And it just became the obvious choice. If you were an SMB SaaS company and you wanted to do a deal, you called SurePad. I share online almost every day now for my coaching. And, lots of readers have become clients. So yeah, writing's super powerful.
let's flip the script here. There's been an incredible amount of stuff covered here. Where can people find you and spend more time or get more insights or a chance to spend more time with you? Because I think it's really you're a special human, and I think the world needs more of it. So how do they find you?
Appreciate that. Yeah, so I post every day except for Sunday on LinkedIn, kind of practicing what I preach. And I don't want my CEOs working on Sunday. It's not a religious thing. I just figure take a day off. Doesn't matter what day it is. For me, it's Sunday. I have a newsletter that comes out every Tuesday. If they go to markmcleod.me, they can sign up for that. The thing that I'm most excited about is this new Limitless community. And so that's at limitless.ceo. And I really am trying to create a movement of CEOs that are putting themselves first, like I say, to create that energy, mental clarity, and inspiration to unlock their revenue growth. And I'm trying to basically change the CEO so that they can change the world, right? Like Warren Buffett said this, right? The most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. The big outcomes happen when you just keep compounding year after year after year after year, never stopping. But most startups stop. They go, maybe they have some growth, then they flame out, and then they're done. And I've sold over $1 billion worth of companies. And the number one reason why founders came to me looking to sell is because they were burnt out. So what I'm hoping to achieve with this is you never burn out. You just always keep going, and for as long as you want, right? And so that's the thing that I'm really focusing next year.
That's really great. That's a really great community as well. I know some of the folks there, and it's a really impressive, not just the caliber of folk, but the change you start seeing in them over time. It's been really impressive. Some quick hits. You once
All right.
explained to me, and we'll get into some closing, what people do and do not know about you. So, MacLeod. You explained this to me once. Maybe you could explain to the audience in quick hit the MAC versus MC. This was interesting to me.
Yes. All right. So you can't tell from my accent, but I lived in Scotland till I was 11 on a tiny island called the Isle of Lewis. 3 out of 10 people on the island are MacLeods, so it's very much MacLeod territory. A lot of the names in Scotland are either Mac or Mick, so MAC or MC. MAC tends to be people that are up in the Highlands. so the northern part of Scotland. MC tends to be in the lower part of Scotland, and it's also in Ireland. A lot of Irish people came over and fornicated with our innocent Scottish women, and there's a lot of mix. Now, Mac is actually Viking. It means son of in the ancient Viking language. And so I was son of Leod. There was lots of Vikings that kind of came down and again fornicated with innocent Scottish women. And so the Macs are descendants of Vikings.
That's awesome. I hope everybody's taking note. And if you want a recommendation on a drink, Mark's your guy. Couple other things. Maybe quick hits on things people may or may not know about you that I do, and I'm gonna spill the beans here. You are a DJ, record label, yogi, CrossFit, tennis. Maybe a couple quick hits along those, and anything I've missed in there.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a confused individual. Music is a giant passion of my life, always has been. Back on that island we lived in, my dad was the lead singer for the big band on the island. He can play every instrument. And I was a drummer in a rock band in high school. This was blissfully before digital cameras, so the evidence is in my mother's basement. But I went to my first rave in 1992. One of my friends from high school started Toronto's first rave company, dropped a hit of acid, danced all night, and it changed my life. And I became a DJ kind of in the late 90s, back when it was difficult. Everybody's a DJ now, but at the time it was vinyl. It was expensive, it was
Not
hard.
everybody's a good DJ though. Like, we'll
No,
get
that's
Neil
fair. That is
today, and
actually
he's your so, yeah.
that's very true. Anyway, so music's a huge passion, and I stopped DJing when I became a dad, but never lost the passion. And in COVID, I started producing tracks and started a label called Deep Down Music, which at its peak was top 50 in the world in its genre. I've since given it to one of my artists in Sri Lanka to run, so I'm not involved with it anymore. And then I had another project called Music for Seekers, which was kind of down tempo music with spiritual elements such as mantra, indigenous drums, binaural beats, etc. So I'm still releasing some tracks there, and we've held a couple of events. So that's the music. Yoga is another huge pillar in my life. I started yoga in my 20s because women look great in Lululemon pants. Doesn't matter why you start, as long as you start. At the time, I was at my first startup. It was going through hyper growth. I was doing a part time MBA at the same time. I don't recommend that. I was dying. And yoga kept me together. And so over time, it became a daily practice. And then randomly, I discovered this thing called Kundalini Yoga, which is very different from the main kind of yoga that we do in the West. Coming back to energy, Kundalini Yoga is actually an energy practice. We all have dormant energy at the base of our spine. And through combination of these Kundalini Kriyas, breath work, breath locks, and mantra, and then ultimately meditation, you can bring this energy up and turn on dormant parts of your brain. And there's a very popular doctor, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who he's a Western doctor, but he's validated what yogis have known for centuries, which is these Kundalini yoga practices can turn on dormant parts of your brain. And he's measured it in like a peer reviewed study. So, anyway, Kundalini yoga is a giant part of my life. I'm a teacher, teach Kundalini yoga. And a lot of my insights around how to harness energy for my CEOs come from that foundation.
Amazing. If folks don't know the difference between breathing out and breathing in, where your stomach's in or out, Mark's gonna take you on a whirlwind there.
Yeah, I'll
Uh,
say breath. You think, like, very briefly, like most CEOs, right? We're in this like fight or flight state. Everything's urgent, kind of chronic stress. Conscious breath, especially if you can breathe from your belly, is actually the fastest way to down regulate your nervous system, right? And calm yourself down. Like most of your nervous system's kind of functions are automatic, they just happen. You can't do anything about it. The only thing you can consciously do is breathe.
it's amazing. Lastly, tennis. A, when are
Yes.
we playing? B, I'll tell folks you've gotten very good over a very short period of time. What's the secret?
uh, I don't know if that's true. But the secret is practice, like anything. If you want to get good at anything, right? Malcolm Gladwell talked about the 10,000 hours. I'm nowhere near the 10,000 hours, but I practice. I have a coach. I go for a lesson every week. I try and do a ball machine session every week and play when I can. And this goes back to energy, like doing what you love. Just love tennis. When you hit that like that perfect hit and it just feels effortless and it just like the right amount like of top spin and then you just nail it or you hit this ace, like I don't know, it's the most satisfying feeling in the world. So I just love it and so I do it.
And just sharing with folks that having had the pleasure of and privilege of playing with you that one day, maybe this summer, we had a bucket of balls. You were, getting the serve going, and I think you might have been 100 balls in, and the glee on your face when you heard the noise and saw the output, and then you hear the ball hit the fence. I was like, "Oh, this is the thing.
So
Got it."
good.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, I love our time together. We'll spend more time, but I think for today we'll wrap it up here. And thank you for the time
Thanks for
that we
having me,
spent
Amar. It's
talking.
always a pleasure.
Cheers.